This reading is for Turiyan, and it's November 7th, 1997. If you'll look through the package I've provided you, you'll find that I have a number of reports and readings for you, beginning with a printout which is a balanced Western astrology reading, a natal reading, birth chart. And you can skip over the first 3, 5, 4 pages, start on page 4 maybe, and if you would read the just the plain English. It's not necessary for you to learn all the symbols and the planets and all of that. Just read the text. It will start out with general, on page 3 with general background information. Then it'll move into favorable and unfavorable aspects that you need to deal with, the easy talents and the struggles. And then in your case you have one minor aspect, which is like an idiosyncrasy that you've got. Then on page 9 it starts into reading house by house with planets in the houses starting 1 through 12. If you're not familiar with astrology, very simply, on the day that you were born, at the time you were born, the layout of the planets falls in the plane of the ecliptic with various constellations as a backdrop. And this 360-degree circumference is broken down into sections, 12 of them, and each of those 12 have been associated with various house matters, ranging from how you present yourself to the world, to career, to relationship, to all basically the areas of life. Please read this report, which is 19 pages, and what I need in terms of feedback from you to confirm that your time of birth is correct is your reaction to this report, whether it mark down things that you agree with or disagree with in terms of its accuracy. If it's generally pretty much on the mark, then we can assume that the time of birth listed is close to when you took your first breath, which is when your clock started in this lifetime. And in the Hindu system, your ascendant is 7 degrees plus into its house, so your time of birth would have to be off half an hour or more in order for it to make any noticeable difference. However, it's good to confirm these things. There are other ways of confirming it when we get into the Hindu dasha periods. We can calibrate things that happened in your life in the past, or things as they happen in your life, marking down the exact date and correlating it with the dasha chart and adjusting the time of birth accordingly. Once that's done, then various formations will produce noticeable results right on time. So the first one is your natal Western chart. The next one that you'll see after having read this balanced natal report, in other words, I tweaked this computer program over the years so that it gives pretty good equal weight to the standard basics of Western astrology. The next reading you'll see is for your prominent aspects. It lists the aspects. All of these are pretty much discussed in this natal report briefly, but in this report I pulled out, it happens you have 4 aspects which are very prominent. And so I've given, from a text by James Braha, a more in-depth reading of each of those, and you should find this to be of interest. They would be strong characteristics that you should find all 4 of them easy to identify. That as a foundation, the next report that I've got is your outer planet transits. Basically, since you were born, the planets have kept moving And the outer planets move, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, for instance, move very slowly. Pluto, in your entire lifetime, may actually move through maybe only 3 or 4 houses out of the 12 in your entire life. So when these outer planets change houses or form some relationship with the position of the planets when you were born, it can trigger certain things for you individually. And so this is very, very significant. This is what makes for, in Western astrology, for like major chapter changes in your life. In your particular case, you have Saturn and Uranus basically having changed positions, changed houses, and so you'll find this outer planet transit reading, which looks ahead for the next year, and you have a moderate amount of outer planet activity. You'll find it to be very useful, and it's something that you should read many times to absorb. First, what we have in this report is a breakdown of the significance and what the symbol of each planet represents. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Then following that explanation comes from Robert Hand's text on transit, an explanation of what that planet in the house that it's passing through, your house, what that means in your life. And then any specific aspects which are hitting, and the dates for those are broken down on the front page, are then delineated. I'll point out the outer planets in particular. In your case, you have a Neptune and a few Uranus aspects are pretty much in effect this entire time period. The orb for these planets can be rather extensive, especially Neptune and Pluto. And even Saturn can extend for, a good 3 months or whatever, depending on how these are bunched up. So a lot of this you will see overlapping. What's listed are the dates specifically when these peak, when they're exact. So leading up to the exact point and then crossing over, there's a certain orb where these energies are working together, either harmoniously or disharmoniously. And so this report can be extremely significant. I want to really emphasize that you should read this report in great detail. That's for the bigger picture from Western astrology. But there's also another technique called solar progressions, which goes from birth year to birth year. And this report starts out with addressing similar issues to the transits, but more to the middle range of your life is what I found them to be effective in. If you don't have an enormous amount of transforming outer planet transits happening, then some of the more mundane areas of life become of interest. And this starts out with an explanation of some of the things that are affecting you at the beginning of the birth year, and then goes into time phenomena for the year with dates. These are not accurate. It takes a transit to actually trigger these. So for instance, in October 6th and then again January 11th, it has marriage is likely, and it repeats itself. The fact is there are if there's a transit coming along, this may actually manifest. I had one individual, and the reason I started printing this out for people is he had in the upcoming summer he had a transit that indicated very strongly marriage and falling in love and all this other stuff. And he laughed about it. He thought it was very humorous because he had no activity in this area whatsoever. He called me in the fall, about 6 months later, he calls me in the fall, and he told me, I thought you'd like to know, Bob, that in fact, the same week that the solar progression hit, I met someone, I fell in love, and I got married. And so ever since then, this was a few years back, ever since then I've printed out the solar progressions, because may not all be it may not be a wholly impressive system. It doesn't go into great detail, but it seems for some people to yield a certain results. The next little packet is in two-part. It has an explanation of biorhythms. All of us, largely in the Western world, grow up in a school system and a working environment that seems to think we're machines and treats us like machines. You're supposed to be able to test in school or in your job place. Your performance is supposed to meet a basic level, and your performance is supposed to be the same every day. Well, people have different varying energy levels, and this is not realistic outlook. So I provide these biorhythms plus your printout of where your emotions, intellectual curve, and physical curve are at for the upcoming year. It's a good thing to monitor if you're under stress to perform. A lot of airplane pilots and super salesmen monitor these closely. Basically, you have a sinusoidal wave of different lengths for physical, emotional, and intellectual areas of your life, and they go from the right side of the page, which is more expressing and expelling energy in these areas. There's a center dotted line where it changes polarity, and on the left side of the page, you have more an issue of recharging your batteries, more passive result. When it crosses the center line, you have maybe 18 minutes, thereabouts, 15, 18 minutes, depending on which one's crossing, where you have a little either brain scramble or you're emotionally confused or you might be accident prone if you're under pressure or stress to perform in that respect. A lot of people, since these can hit on or these criticals can hit on or plus or minus 12 hours from your time of birth adjusted for time zone, a lot of people, depending on when you were born, sleep through these. Other people have to endure these critical periods while they are in the workplace or during the waking day out performing, and so it becomes real important for them to if they're under stress, they may have difficulties. At the very back of the report, we have your critical periods through the end of the millennium, when two of the lines cross in the same day, even if they're 12 hours apart. This makes for a really uncomfortable day. Even if there's no external reason, there doesn't have to be. It's you. This is enough to tilt anyone's apple cart. Having two of these go through it produces confusion, and you should just stay in bed and not even fight it. Just write these days off. You get one or two or three sometimes in a year. You have one coming up in December and two coming up in January, which is quite interesting. If we go back to the chart and take a look at it, you'll see that sometimes all of the sinusoidal waves tend to come into phase, and sometimes they sort of are out of phase and crisscross. So if you look at like May, end of May, June 1st, you'll see that they come all into phase, and you have a high reading on the right. The right set of numbers go from minus 100 to plus 100, which is just a general rule of thumb of whether your overall energy level should be largely passive and recharging, or whether you should be out kicking out energy. So for instance, the middle to end of May, as these are integrating and going to a peak of 94, you will feel very much like your energies are becoming integrated as very up elevator. For those week and a half time period, you'll find that to be like a wonderful sensation. You should not sleep through this. You should plan activities for advancement or performing or enjoying an active activity or a vacation of some sort to use this energy. It's very special. You only get a couple of these a year. And then, of course, after it peaks out, it's down elevator. And so you just can't hold on to, this high degree of integration. We're just not built that way as human beings. And so on, you'll see that the energy levels go in various ways. For instance, if you look around end of July, you'll see the physical is low and emotional and intellectual are on the right side. This is a great time, for instance, as an example, when you could do creative writing, meditation. You just feel like sitting there, and yet your emotions and your intellect are active. And so those are, to the extent that you can match your activities to the layout of these energies in this simple way, an individual can do a lot to control stress and make themselves more effective in life. Of course, with a cup of coffee and a lot of willpower and trying to maintain a set of important commitments, you can override all of these biorhythms. It's just that it produces a tremendous amount of stress in life. The more you can align yourself with these biorhythms or with the transits that are happening in your life, or in the Hindu system, the dasha periods, you'll find you can be more effective at getting at energy in your, your human potential. So this brings us to the last reading, which is a printout of all the related areas. There's some 16 charts for the Hindu. All we're going to do in this tape is read once around the wheel, similar to the Western reading, even though this system is, the means of interpretation are entirely different from the Western, so don't mix the two. What I'm going to do is read from James Braha's book, Ancient Hindu Astrology, the placement of your planets in houses, and give you some of the interpretations of what this means in your lifetime and how it basically functions. And then I'll follow up with an explanation of your dasha periods, which is like the master chart for the layout of how your it's like the sheet music for your how your planets are going to make music and how your life is going to unfold. And then I have a little bit of information for a follow-up that I routinely give. This system, unlike the Western, which is in some ways a little sugar-coated and tries to encourage you in a positive direction to overcome your difficulties and work with things and believes in free will, the Hindu system is rooted in predestination and is harshly objective. So there's some things you're going to read that, and a lot of what you have as far as the layout goes are quite wonderful, and yet there are going to be some things where you just have to take it on the chin. They're like really blunt, and I'll try and get across the information in a way where I accurately sum up the strength of how your planets are laid out and in what areas they are and what potentials there are. First thing any Hindu astrologer would do in looking at your chart is to look at the ascendant ruler, which in this case we have the sun. And the sun is in the 7th house, shining on its own house, the 1st house, which is interesting. And where the moon is placed, because this is a moon-based system. The Western astrology is based on the sun. The Hindu astrology is based on the moon. It's central to this system. And it's placed in the 3rd house. So the 7th house, which represents relationships, formal relationships, such as marriage, business partnerships, and to some extent foreign involvement with foreign countries, but basically relationships and formal relationships. And the 3rd house, which represents your younger siblings, your hands, your willpower, your ability to put your will into things, and some inner city activity, short distance travel and the like. To some extent, your daily activities are spoken to in the 3rd house. So the readings for the moon in the 3rd and the sun in the 7th, these are 2 houses that are going to be drawing your attention your entire life. They are natural house areas for this individual for their entire life. And I'll have much more to say about this. You have this sun aspecting its own house, so there's a certain amount of attention that this individual can handle. Sun is one of the significations of father and success and a number of other things. As well, related to father is the ninth house, and the ruler of that is Mars, which is quite strong in the sixth house. And Mars is exalted. This particular chart, you have a lot of strengths. You have a couple exalted planets, and Jupiter's in its own house. There are no fallen planets. This is a special individual in terms of the way you're wired to manifest actions in the outer world. One thing that's simple is your understanding of success and relationship to father is a fairly central issue to how you present yourself to the world. There are all kinds of other things I'm going to read about that are going to talk about things that you can do, and yet central to this you have this sun aspect on the first house to deal with. So what we'll do is move on to the first reading, which is moon in the third house, and this is a waning moon, but it's still fairly bright, so it's going to produce some good results as far as this very important planet. Waning is not considered as good as waxing. If the moon is in the third house, the significations of the house flourish, while the moon is somewhat spoiled. Since the moon governs the mind, this position does not favor mental peace. If the moon is waning or afflicted, in this case, there are no aspects to the moon. So it's all right, just like it is. The ruler of the third house, which is strong by having moon there, the ruler is Venus, which is with another benefic, and Venus is exalted. So this is a very strong house. Moon in the third, though, is not particularly favorable for one's status or general well-being. Now, I'll point out there are going to be a variety of blunt statements as we go around the wheel, but in this system, you must blend everything together in order to see what the particular mixture is for you. It's like in cooking. You can have some very diverse tasting seasonings, and yet when you blend them together in certain proportions, you get a very delicious flavor. In India, there's this tea called chai, and I don't know if anyone has ever written down precisely what the official formula or recipe is for chai. In India, it's like you go by the flavor, which is chai tea. If you know how to make chai, you throw in a little, I don't know, nutmeg and a little of this and a little of that, and once you have the flavor, it's chai. If you put all the right ingredients in there, but you don't have the right proportions by flavor, it's not chai, even though you've got the right ingredients in there, in the tea. What we're looking for in reading all of these ingredients and looking at their strengths and weaknesses and placements and involvements is what is Turiyan? What does this picture add up to in terms of how you have involvements in the world and how you're wired to manifest actions externally? Also, the relationship with the mother will be distant or disturbed. We also have to look at the fourth house for that. The person will have very strong desires. He will be interested in music, dance, drama, or singing, and may choose such a career. Person will be communicative and may be involved in the literary field or any communications career. He will also desire a position influencing the masses. If a man, he will have powerful desires for females. If the moon is waning, he will have younger siblings, but the relationship may not be close, or possibly don't have any younger siblings at all. If the moon is waxing, he will be bold and courageous. He will travel constantly within his city. The person will have a beautiful voice and will be excited, adventurous, and motivated. He will have a very active mind. The moon's aspect on the ninth house gives good effects regarding father and religion. Hindu scriptures declare that the person will be strong, and intoxicated with power. This would be a lot more pronounced if the moon were brighter and waxing. A full moon, which would be in your first house, would be the strongest position by virtue of fullness. It is one house away from its fallen sign. In ancient times, the mystics discovered that of the 360 degrees that a planet can travel, one particular position, people that were born under that position got incredible, in-your-face, wonderful results. That's exalted position. 180 degrees from that, they got in-your-face real problems in terms of the significations of this planet. Your moon could be stronger in a number of ways, but it is still bright enough that you would have pretty good results from this planet. You also have Saturn in the 11th, and as well as Moon in the 3rd, and you have Mars and Mercury in the 6th. These are desire houses for various reasons. Anyway, the 3rd and 11th in particular will produce a lot of activity in the life and can keep things pretty exciting. Never have to worry about things settling down or being boring. As a matter of fact, you've got a certain amount of what I'll call wish power. Now, along with this, what I will mention are a couple of suggestions. One is that you always wish for positive things. You're the type of person who can wish, and when you get all worked up and you really, really want something and you can feel it in the gut of your stomach, things happen. You can manifest things. And if you're unfortunate and wish for negative things, you can actually introduce problems in your life that weren't even destined to be there on your own. It's as if you get the privilege of getting immediate feedback in terms of how you're using these energies. It's like Aladdin's lamp. The second thing is I would recommend you be simple. Wish for one thing at a time. You can dissipate yourself by wishing for too many things in too much of a relatively short time period. If you're wishing for huge things, they take a little longer. You're wishing for, an ice cream cone, it might get taken care of very shortly. So proportionally, it's important to pace yourself and get a feeling for how your energies work for manifesting things. You also will, there's a price that you pay for Aladdin's lamp. Basically your concentration is being trained with positive and negative feedback in real time. So you're being given feedback, and it's as if your consciousness is being trained on what you're doing because you have Aladdin's lamp, but you have to pick. You have to prioritize what you want to wish for. So there is this price to pay for the privilege of being able to manifest things in this world. And so it's like, enjoy yourself, wish for positive things, be simple, have fun, knock yourself out. There's things that you can have happen in this lifetime. Rahu in the 3rd, this is one of the houses that's probably most closely delineated in India, because it's the first of the spiritual houses having to do with home, and your home within yourself, being content. This rules contentness. If you have a malefic, which you do in the 4th, you may have a certain amount of discontent. For a spiritual person, this can amount to spiritual discontent, which drives you to going deeper and going deeper. Rahu is the north node of the moon, opposite Ketu, which is in your 10th house. And it's a calculated point, not an actual, they're calculated points that are mathematically worked out and move in reverse direction based on the movement of the moon. If Rahu is in the 4th house, the person will have difficulties with his mother, who may herself lead a troubled life. Person will have strong desires to own land or his own home, but this placement is a negative influence towards such ambitions. There may be difficulties in the educational life or in obtaining a degree. Since the fourth is an angular house, which gives power to planets, and because it rules the heart and emotions, this person may have powerful cravings for worldly benefits. Happiness and contentment may be somewhat disturbed by such insatiable desires. It is said that Rahu or Ketu in any angular house causes many major changes throughout the life. So it may produce certain time periods where all kinds of things change for you. It's like having little chapters to go through in your life. And there's sort of, like in the Western, the moon's nodes, in particular the North Node, they're associated with all kinds of karmic missions and responsibilities. In this system, they are more specific about what's happening. This takes us to Mars and Mercury in the 6th, which both of which are special. Mars is, in fact, exalted. You have a spectacular Mars, and even on its own, if it weren't exalted, it's in the 6th house, which is a growing house and what's called an evil house, where it welcomes malefics, which Mars is. This is all lingo for me to be able to interpret. It's with a benefic, which is even pumping it up even more, and Mercury is changing houses with the ruler of this house, which is Saturn in the 11th. So it's like you're wired really tightly here, and as you grow, the 3rd, 6th, and 10th, and 11th houses are all growing houses. So beyond the maturing of the planets, 5 of your planetary influences are going to continue to grow powerfully year after year. By maturing of the planets, I'll mention that beginning with Jupiter and during different birth years up to age 46 to 47 with Ketu, each of the planets at various points and for various purposes, depending on their significations, come to full maturity. They amp up. And in that birth year, if they're, for instance, exalted, in your case, they can yield some special results. So, for instance, Venus, age 24, 25, is exalted and specially placed. And during that birth year, will give you some results as far as 3rd and 10th house, which it rules, and the 8th house where it's placed. And this Mars, which is age 27, 28, will give results as far as 4th and 9th house matters, and it's placed very well in the 6th. As a matter of fact, what I'll do is read this Mercury first, which is a benefic in the 6th, and then this exalted Mars, which is very special, so you can see in the blend what kind of energies that you're dealing with here. If Mercury's in the 6th house, the person will have strength to defeat his enemies and competitors. He may have a good knowledge of health matters. There will be obstacles in educational pursuits. However, the person is outwardly intelligent and well respected. He will be interested in expressing and proving his point of view and is very talented in debating issues. Because he is so concerned with being right, he may be known as a quarrelsome person. He will be quite proud and enjoy showing off or bragging about himself. There may be a speech problem in childhood which improves in time, or you may have simply had trouble expressing yourself. This is a growing house, though, and you would grow out of it. The person obtains good jobs with fine pay. Daily work may involve any intellectual or communications activity. The person will write many letters, and if Mercury is well aspected, he will become an author. If Mercury is afflicted, there may be nervous disorders, speech defects, mental problems, and poor health. Mercury is, quote-unquote, afflicted because it's with Mars, which is a malefic. The person would be too easily excitable or rash under many circumstances. There would also be difficulties in the sphere of job and subordinates, etc. Mars is clearly the planet which is strong in this house, and Mercury is benefiting Mars. However, you should note that you should be careful in terms of your nervous system. You should not get a lot of stimulation. You shouldn't be waking up with a cup of coffee. You should wake up with some sleepy time tea. You should be soothing yourself. You should have a home which soothes you and protects you and insulates you from the harshness of the outside world. You should also regularly engage in aerobics and cardiovascular exercise, even minor 3 times a week, will produce amazing results, because it will help the lungs, and the lungs are the only organ that can expel gaseous byproducts from the bloodstream, which are a byproduct of any food that you eat. And so a lot of people forget that, and in the event that you would become stagnant and not pump your lungs a little bit, your thinking would become cloudy. And this can be very uncomfortable and hard on your nerves with this Mars, which is quite strong. What I'm going to do is read you the regular Mars in the 6th house, which is great, and then I'm going to read, in fact, you have really an exalted Mars. If Mars is in the 6th house, the person will have enormous ability to rise above his competitors and defeat his enemies. He will be very powerful and successful. He will be vital and healthy. The person will be adept at technical or detail work. He is courageous and fulfills his ambitions easily. There may be difficulties with workers, subordinates, and tenants, depending on the condition of Mars. Hindu scriptures are emphatic that the person will be highly passionate and libidinous. This may be due to the strength of Mars growing with each year, or because from this house, Mars aspects the 12th, the house of bed pleasures, which is basically sex, of course. If Mars is in your case in Capricorn in the 6th, the benefits already mentioned are magnified. The person will reach the top of his field with little or no effort. He will be extraordinarily healthy and free from illness. He will benefit from his maternal uncle and cousins. The uncle may be powerful or prosperous. The person may also own property. This placement is quite strong. In spite of what was said with Rahu as far as owning your own home, this Mars with a certain amount of effort, when you begin to peak in your career, your chosen profession, in your daily activities, you can certainly get to a point, just by the fact that these are growing houses and the 4th house is not, that eventually you will have the power to get your own property. Sun in the 7th, which is your ascendant ruler. So 7th house matters are very important to you. We have the Sun is very poorly placed in the 7th house. All of life seems to center on the opposite sex for this person. Marriage generally occurs later in life than usual. Once the decision is made, there's a strong likelihood of troubles or delays. The partner may be of a different nationality or religion, and the parents may therefore object, or the dowry is insufficient if you're in India, or some other problem may arise. The spouse is powerful, domineering, bossy, and manipulative. The person will either acquiesce or fight back, but in any case, there is very little true marital happiness. Because such problems exist, divorce is a strong likelihood. However, this person will not be the one to walk out on the marriage, regardless of the circumstances. There's a strong possibility that the person will eventually be humiliated or scandalized by the partner. The sex drive is very strong, and the person is almost never without a physical relationship. A man with this position may have very little or no real respect for women and may use them for his sense gratification. The person does not derive all of the sexual pleasure he desires from his spouse. This may be partly due to the fact that he is at the mercy of the domineering spouse. The character of the spouse is low or questionable. Hindu scriptures declare the person to be immoral and that he will have relations with women other than his spouse. They also give out that the person is constantly wandering about in an unsettled state of mind. So you kind of have to take that one on the chin. There are some things we'll discuss at the very end along the lines of how to fudge this, or to do things to ameliorate this. One, in terms of one thing that can be done in the relative to the 7th house is sometimes you can move from your homeland, from your mother country, to a foreign land, and in choosing to live there, which is considered a hardship, to leave Mother India would be considered a great hardship, or for anyone, you would in that way be using up some of the negative aspects of this placement. And in a foreign country, having moved, you may find that it's easier for you to find a more normal relationship kind of setup. The same comments would apply to business partnerships, by the way. Now, to make up for that reading, we are going to move to these two wonderful benefics in the 8th house. Jupiter's in its own house. Venus is exalted. These are both wonderful readings. Really, truly, they are. And they are benefiting each other. Jupiter's expanding Venus. Venus is bliss. Jupiter is optimism. And they're both in this 8th house, which is the house of life and death. And the second of the spiritual houses, which has to do with occult or hidden knowledge, spiritual experience, as opposed to the 9th house, which is more traditional religion. So Jupiter and, we'll read Jupiter and Venus. First, Jupiter in its own house. What we'll do is read the regular one, and then, of course, in its own house is the exalted. If Jupiter's in the 8th house, and there's a number of things that we're going to read that when you blend the two of these together with the exalted readings, you're going to understand how wonderful this is. But it starts on the low end and we work up. The person will live a very long life and die a peaceful or painless death. He will be sexually powerful and very sexually attractive. He is also extremely vital and lively. There will be a good deal of wealth coming from the marriage partner. The person may benefit from wills, legacies, and insurance policies. In case of divorce, alimony will be plentiful. Because the significations of Jupiter are spoiled, there may be few children or difficulties in the relationship with them. The firstborn child may lead a difficult life. There may be no appreciation of religion. However, the person may be quite interested or involved in the occult or metaphysical field. He will have very strong intuition. This is an excellent placement for an astrologer, especially due to the aspect made on the 2nd house, which makes the person knowledgeable, well-versed, and capable of retaining information. Family life is also favored because of the aspect to the 2nd house. Hindu sages are divided regarding the effects of this position on wealth. This is because Jupiter, which is the indicator of the 2nd house, Karaka, is harmed, yet at the same time is throwing a very favorable aspect on the house itself. In any case, luck and fortune are marred, and the person must earn whatever benefits he enjoys in life through his own work. Jupiter in this house gives protection from accidents and chronic or long-term illnesses. There would also be no ailments of the reproductive system unless Venus is very badly afflicted. It's actually in this house exalted and with benefic Jupiter, which is quite excellent. The person may suffer from allergies or liver problems. In spite of all of this, you really should be careful not to overindulge in sweets and oils and things that are detrimental to your liver. But I don't see a major problem here. This individual can be extremely healthy to the extent of being a healer or a bodybuilder, depending on your leaning. Hindu scriptures assert that the person will be sinful and base and engage in bad deeds. This is presumably because he is in no way religious, as Jupiter is the Karaka of the 9th house. Maybe difficulties with the father, gurus, and spiritual teachers. Now, Jupiter is in Pisces in the 8th, which is its own house. The benefits given above are magnified and the negative results listed are diminished. The person will live an extremely long life and gain great financial benefits from his spouse. The person may be a sex symbol. There is not only an interest and ability in occult or metaphysical subjects, but a desire for enlightenment or final liberation. The person will be highly intuitive or psychic. There will be wealth from wills and legacies. The significations of Jupiter are not harmed as much as they would be if Jupiter were in a different sign in the 8th. The person's sense of religion, though more bent on the occult or non-traditional philosophy, is genuine and in no way distorted. His children, especially the firstborn, may be mystical and involved in the occult. We're also going to read the regular Venus and then this truly wonderful Venus exalted. The person will live a very long life and die a peaceful or painless death. The placement is also very fortunate in terms of wealth and happiness. This may seem confusing since Venus is the planet governing happiness and should be spoiled in this Dusthana, which is an evil house. However, as the house of life, the 8th receives such a joyous and exuberant energy from Venus that the person is constantly delighted. He is extremely enthusiastic, vibrant, and happy to be alive. Wealth is favored due to the positive aspect cast onto the 2nd house. Also, there will be great financial gains from the spouse. The person will be extraordinarily sensual and sexually active. Venus and the 8th house both govern the reproductive system, and therefore, if Venus is afflicted, there would be a problem with sexual diseases and urinary problems and prostate ailments. In this case, it's with a benefic, which is sheltering it and protecting. If divorce occurs, there will be good alimony. This position is decidedly bad for love affairs in marriage, and the person will suffer on such account. If the 7th house is also afflicted, which it is, marital affairs may be disastrous. Venus in the 8th could also indicate a marriage partner who is involved in the occult or other secretive affairs. The person is generally protected from accidents, but the ascendant must also be analyzed. Hindu scriptures declare that if Venus is afflicted, which it is not, then you would have problems with other areas. In fact, Venus is exalted in this house. The benefits which have been described above are heightened. The negative results mentioned are lessened or nullified. The person will be long-lived and happy. He will be, and this is in spite of this 4th house Rahu, and of course we'll be looking at the Dasha periods to see when each of these time periods come up. But in general, the person will be long-lived and happy, will be extremely sensuous, and may be considered a sex symbol. This is guaranteed. He may inherit great wealth through wills and legacies. He will also gain great wealth from his marriage partner. Married life will not be harmed as much as it would be if Venus were in another sign in the 8th. The person's spouse may be a renowned person in the field of mysticism, the occult, or some other secretive work. The person is very intuitive or psychic. He is vibrant and brimming with enthusiasm. Excuse me. And this takes us to this. So this is wonderful stuff for a house that gives a lot of people serious problems. And basically between the two of them, people would very definitely view you as a very attractive, literally a sex symbol. And the intuition is very strong, and the enthusiasm possible in this kind of a chart is very strong. So there's a lot to buoy you up. Even if this Rahu in the 4th gives you a certain amount of discontent underneath it all, this person, especially if they stay active, can ride on his enjoyment. South Node in the 10th house, which is your career house, because malefics in Upachaya or growing houses produce good results. Ketu in the 10th gives excellent career success. However, the sign placement should be noted. In this case, it's kind of mixed, as Ketu may cause problems if it's in an unfriendly sign. Actually, it's in a pretty good sign. In such case, the person could experience strange difficulties in his career. He would be vulnerable to deceptive characters or uncontrollable influences. Ketu in the 10th favors interest in spiritual disciplines, and the person may enjoy many holy pilgrimages. So you may have, whatever your career, you're going to have a lot of discrimination. Ketu represents discrimination, and so you would be very detail-oriented in whatever your career is, and you would have a nose for career advancement, or your career itself could have to do with psychic things or discrimination on one area or another. A couple of the areas, like communications, was mentioned twice already. So you may find that you have a nose for handling telecommunications, communications of all sorts. Saturn in the 11th will fill in another piece of all of this. Saturn in the 11th is greatly enhanced by its placement in the 11th house. Therefore, the person is long-lived, mature, wise, and powerful. He will have leadership qualities and wield much power. He may be involved in government and will benefit from eminent persons and authority figures. He will have many influential, powerful, or spiritual friends. Because malefics in Upachaya or growing houses give good results, the person will be wealthy, respected, and influential. He may own property or buildings, another signification for becoming a landlord or owning your own property, and you may actually become a landlord. This actually may be strong enough, the two of them, especially since both of those, once again, are in growing houses. So even if initially you may have problems with property, as you grow older, your wealth and influence and contacts will grow and grow and grow, and you needn't worry about it. Eventually you will undoubtedly own property. This position does not favor the significations of the eldest sibling, and there may be suffering on such account. Same is true of any paternal uncles. Because the aspect cast on the 5th house, the number of children is limited, and certain Hindu scriptures declare that the person will have a broken education due to that same aspect. The person is likely to have rather far-reaching goals and ambitions, and he has the luck and fortitude to realize these dreams. Even though Saturn aspects the 5th, speculations will be profitable because the 11th house governs gains and profits. In such endeavors, the person may be conservative and cautious. So this gives us a basic once around the wheel, and I'm largely recording all of this in order to get your feedback and from these other materials and the like. There are a number of areas, if you have particular interest, be they career or relationship or money or whatever, where I can explain in greater detail, maybe by telephone would be normal for us to have set aside a half an hour or an hour telephone conversation just to discuss how your energies are related to each other after you've absorbed all of these materials, so that you have a foundation, and hopefully and usually it stimulates a few questions, and I'd be happy to deal with all of those. The other thing I wanted to look at is your dasha periods. Looking at your dasha periods, which is further on in the report, you'll see that you were born into a Rahu-Saturn period. So this political power, worldly power aspect, or spiritual power, is a very strong indication. The time period that you're born into, a particular dasha period, the planets that lined up are very descriptive of your nature. In any case, you went through a Rahu period. Typical at the end of this, you were born into the middle of an 18-year Rahu period, north node of the moon. It went into a Jupiter period in 1985 at age 10. The closing years of Rahu, it said that all that was accomplished during Rahu, and you're at a very young age, is lost. There may have been some separations, maybe from loved ones. I'm not certain how that would have manifested. In any case, beginning at age 10, you would have this Jupiter in the 8th house, and in fact it is in its own house, so 5th house, which has to do with mental things, creativity, fine arts, and the 8th house, which is occult knowledge and wills and legacies, money from other people, institutions, and the like, are prominent. And Jupiter would have a lot to do with long-distance travel, opportunities of all sorts. The fact is, you are now in a Jupiter moon period, if you look down the list, and so this brings in the influence of the moon, which has to do with the public and the like. This is in the 3rd house, and it rules the 12th house, which is the 3rd of the spiritual houses, having to do with enlightenment and how you spend your money and bed pleasures, sex. So depending on how you use your efforts, you can, pull your willpower during this time period, along with Jupiter generating some opportunities for you. All you have to do is kick into active mode and wish for something. Get yourself perked up a little bit. We're not talking just mentally, coldly, analytically thinking, oh, I would like this, or I guess I would like that. No, you have to get worked up about it. for this wish power to work. And whatever you get worked up about, get your emotions and your thinking and everything all integrated. You can feel it in your stomach or whatever. You can generate opportunities in these 12th or 5th and 8th house areas. This ends with, let's see, we have Jupiter, Mars to go through, which will be a very active time period. You have your maturing of Venus during this time period, and then Jupiter, Rahu, which because Rahu is there, gives you discontent. You may have opportunities, but you may want to use your powers, worldly power at that stage, 24 to 26, to make some opportunities real and permanent, because then you go age 26 into this Saturn period, and that'll be more of a wet blanket. Saturn's the outermost planet used in the Hindu system, and so has a lot of spiritual effects. They're not always that pleasant, but you have a very strong Saturn in the 11th house, and so there may even be political involvement, like was mentioned, or political or spiritual authority, and yet this Saturn is retrograde. In this system, that means that it is internalized. These energies are internalized. So you may find things for structuring your career. It would be a time period for structuring career and building the means by which you would support yourself for the rest of your life. This is built during Saturn. And you may also put tremendous effort and hard work into spiritual development. And Saturn is typical of responsibility and humility, perseverance,